Welcome to Super Movie Brothers. Let's start the show.
This is a podcast on the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.
Oh no. I can't swim! Whoops, guess I slipped! More energy! I got a feeling you're gonna take to this job like a duck to water. My little airbrushed beauty. Think on my planet, we never say die. We say, not my shorts.
You think I might find happiness in the animal kingdom, Ducky?
Like they say, Dal. Love's strange. We could always give it a try. I've got to get back to my own kind. Although, I have developed a greater appreciation for the female version of the human anatomy.
Oh, Howard, you really are the worst.
Welcome to Movie Cocktail Podcast. I'm your host, Super Movie Brother Dave.
I'm your host, Super Movie Brother Jay.
And I'm your other host, Fan Film Boy Robert.
And I am the other guy, Mark.
The other guy. Yeah, like I said, I think it's safe to say that you guys can become Super Movie Brothers at this point.
Oh,
I like
thanks,
that.
Dave.
Yeah, or at least Super Movie Cousins, whatever you want. But we'll keep it in the family, regardless.
Of course.
So we're here tonight to talk about Howard the Duck.
Yes.
Which is a film that was produced by George Lucas, directed by Willard Huyck, and written by Willard Huyck and Gloria Katz. And Howard the Duck was created by Mavel Comics writer Steve Gerber.
Yes.
So this movie, we're going to get into a lot of it when we start breaking down the film, scene by scene, and we start going over some of our favorite scenes and everything like that. But what I want to do first is I want to go around and talk about everyone's impressions on this film, because I can guarantee you, whatever your impressions are today as an adult, they were completely different when you were a kid. So I'm going to start with Rob, because Rob, this was your category that you selected, right?
This was my category. I chose the superhero origin films.
Right.
And I must say, as soon as I saw Howard the Duck was going to be in there, I knew it was going to win. I mean, people were automatically going to vote for that one.
An absolute landslide victory that was. Because I honestly didn't expect it
I didn't expect anyone to vote for it when I suggested
No, I did.
it.
I did. As soon as it was up there, I thought everybody's going to vote for that just because of what it is.
It was surprising it went that well.
Yeah, no,
I guess it was
such
so
a
out of left
landslide,
field
but-
that, it was like, all right.
Yeah, it's one of those things that,
It is technically an origin story. I mean,
it is an origin story.
What's
Yeah,
the origin story of the whole MCU?
basically, yeah.
it's the origin story for at least this is. We'll get into it later on, but the first Marvel movie to ever make it into the
Theaters.
into theaters. Yeah. So Dolph Lundgren Punisher was after this, and previous to this, it was the Captain America serial that played
The
in
terrible
cinemas.
one with the plastic shield and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, other than that, there wasn't a Marvel film in the theaters at this time. This was the first one. Isn't that weird? You think like all these Hallmark characters that Marvel has, and the first one to go into the theaters is Howard the Duck.
Well, it says something about the time. I mean, it's one of those things where they had to do something big almost to make it different. It's not like it was any other movie that was out there at the time. So they had to make it different to make it stand out. So I think that's one of the reasons why it did both good and bad, I guess.
Absolutely. Now, Mark, what were your first impressions on this as a kid? You have a different memory of it. Yeah, as a kid. Seeing it then, and then you can talk about your impressions of it now. But as a kid, like, what do you remember from this?
As a kid, well, I did grow up with this movie, and I definitely remember, it being quoted in the house a lot. It was one of those VHS tapes that was definitely worn out at my house.
Wow.
I'm not sure why. Looking back, I do appreciate certain things about it. It is just a weird movie. Maybe it says something about me that I enjoyed it so much. But as I was telling you before,
well, you're the one that selected this film, so
exactly,
it does say something about you.
Yeah, and I stand by it. It's not a great movie. I know that's a hot take right there, but
no, it's
what the way I looked at it is, this is what they had to work with at the time. At this point, the special effects that were available, and I think some, like the miniatures at the end and stuff. I think those are really cool looking, and the makeup effects with the Jennings character or Jennings character.
Howard.
Some interesting stuff. Obviously, if it was done today, it would be all CGI.
And Howard the Duck was done all CGI when he was done in 2014
recently,
for
Guardians of the
Galaxy, right?
But there's a charm to this, and I was telling you, I actually think it held up more than I thought it would. It does definitely drag towards the end. Plot wise, it kind of gets a little.
Yeah,
it's almost like two different movies. I was saying, like it's almost like the first hour and then like the second hour, but It's definitely got some interesting things going on. I mean, I was entertained by it, I would say, even watching it now. So
for me, this is one of those movies that I watched with my mom, like growing up. Like this was one of the movies that she really enjoyed. I don't know why. I think it's just because it's just dumb fun. Like, I mean, and that's what comes down. It's just
the best idea. Yeah, right. Dumb fun.
It's
I like
it's
that.
Absolute dumb fun. And I mean, I got laughs out of it. I was never afraid of it or anything like that as a kid. Even though watching it now, I can see that there are some things to be a little afraid of. Some things to really make you
cringe.
Cringe-worthy movie.
Definitely some stuff that falls under the radar.
But that's also just because it's time period, like the 80s. It's very 80s,
it's true.
It's a very 80s
it's a band
film.
in the club scenes,
Very 80s.
Tim Robbins,
the cars.
Tim Robbins, very 80s.
And,
the hairstyles.
He goes for broke though. I will say, I didn't realize that before. How just look balls to the wall he goes.
Yeah, that's true.
Him and what's his name?
We'll get into it later. He has a very weird scene where he comes back and he sees Howard and he's like.
Yeah,
and he just makes like weird noises to Howard, and it's just like they're old friends, but they met once.
Yeah,
him and Jeffrey Jones. Jeffrey Jones definitely a tour de force performance in this movie. I mean, if you could say nothing else about this movie, I would say
way over the top.
Yeah, he's so great in it. And he used to scare the shit out of me when I was a kid.
And this was just before Beetlejuice for Jeffrey Jones, but after Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I believe so.
So Jeffrey Jones, we'll get into later on in our final segment where we talk about interesting facts and trivia on this one, because if listeners of Super Movie Brothers remember our live show where me and Jay talked about Beetlejuice, there's a lot of weird things with Jeffrey Jones. There's a reason you don't see him in Hollywood anymore, despite the fact that in the 80s he was in everything. So yeah, for me, as a kid, you don't notice all the weird stuff. You don't notice how crazy some of the shit in this film really is. And then when you watch it as an adult, which I probably haven't seen this film since I was 6 or 7 years old, I would say. So watching it now, I knew what I was in for because I've heard other people talking about it. I've heard other people, say like this and that about it. And so I kind of went in with the expectation that this is going to be absolutely crazy. And I expected nothing from it and found myself enjoying quite a bit of it. So, Jay, what are your thoughts?
Well, I actually was creeped out by this movie as a kid. I was a big Donald Duck fan, and maybe if I was older and I first saw this movie, back in the 90s, I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. However, it really creeped me out, and it still creeps me out, to be honest, to this day. And it's
be really honest. You didn't watch this movie.
No.
You didn't watch this movie for this podcast.
I watched the trailer.
Shame.
I watched the trailer. I watched a YouTube thing of like
Save your
top
time.
10 weird moments or weird scenes in Howard the Duck. And I just could not bring myself to put it on because it still freaks me out and disturbs
What exactly
me.
freaks you out about it? May I ask?
The duck. the look of the duck.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're not used to it,
and just the whole '80s look to it all, and how just weird Tim
How
Robbins
costuming
is,
it
and
is.
just like everything just freaks me out.
You know what creeps me out? This is a
it's
George
the
Lucas
trauma is,
movie.
like, when I was a kid, just like reliving it again. Like
If
I
you-
just don't. Like,
If you ever needed to point to the fact that George Lucas can call upon an army of little people at any point that he wants, just look at this film.
Oh yeah,
you
absolutely.
used to give them work at
It's
least.
crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I
He was
mean,
employing all these
you
people.
You think about all the Jawas in A New Hope. You think about
Ewoks.
all the Ugnaughts in Empire Strikes Back, all the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi, and in every duck in this film. Because you do get in the beginning a sweeping panning shot of a city, which we later find out is Cleveland.
But even Howard himself is played by
No, that was Marshburg, wasn't it? Where you?
No, it was. I'm sorry. Yes, he's in Cleveland in the real world.
Yeah,
that
Marshburg.
was Marshingland, DC.
Marshingland. That's it.
But six. I
Everything
believe
has to be a duck pun
There's at
on
least-
this egg-shaped world that Howard
There's
came
multiple people playing Howard. Many of them little people. Also a child,
from. Yes.
which didn't work out for them apparently. But we'll go into that
Especially
later.
when you get into the fact that Jeffrey Jones was on it, but we will get into that
that's-
later.
That's a whole other thing.
So Howard the Duck won in a poll that was put up on Twitter. It won against 2004 The Punisher with Thomas Jane, which got 21% of the votes. My
was me.
pick, which was
Isn't that actually our first movie?
that was our original movie Cocktail was our
It
first
was.
movie, which that audio is completely lost. Like I
think
don't
I
have
might
it.
have it. I will have to dig
Right.
that from the dark.
Because if you do, I would love to put that up. Sam Raimi's 2002 Spider-Man, which got 21% of the vote,
Another good one.
which was my pick. Jay's pick, Iron Man in 2008, which got 24% of the vote. And the landslide
By a
victory.
landslide.
Out of 406 votes on Twitter, Howard the Duck. And this is what we're here
Again,
fucking
you're
talking
welcome,
about.
everyone.
Yeah. I don't blame you, Mark. I don't blame you for picking this. I blame Twitter for voting it in. This
Thank
is
you, Twitter.
This is our Trump.
Oh no! Come on.
Whoa!
Do not
have
make
to
that
record
You
this
comparison.
brought it.
We're gonna have to record
How
this.
dare you, sir?
We're gonna have to record this movie.
Do not
and we're gonna have to
compare
live with
Howard
it.
the Duck to Trump, please.
All right. So the whole point of doing Movie Cocktail is we've talked about the movie a little bit. Let's get into the cocktail. And since this category was selected by Rob, he was forced to come up with something for Howard the Duck. So describe your cocktail. What you got going on here?
Well, first off, I did want to go what everybody thought. I didn't want to go the duck fart. I thought
Right.
that's what everybody would be thinking about, a duck themed sort of drink.
That's what I teased.
That was my first thought.
That's what I thought everybody would be going. My second thought was I was thinking of going something cherry, as in cherry bomb.
Cherry bomb.
So I was thinking of going
Cherry
something
bomb.
like that. But then I
Cherry
was like,
bomb.
that's just like a
Great
part
band.
of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a small part. You know, so I thought I went duck themed. So what I did was I came up with a shot. It's called the Duck Pond. And what it comes up with is it's equal parts Malibu mango rum. It is Peach Schnapps, and it is Blue Curacao.
Okay.
And then
This is not a shot for the faint of heart.
dropped it in the bottom. I dropped a couple of Swedish fish, or as my children like to call them, gooey fish.
Gooey fish.
And
all right.
I don't think we're going to actually drink those things. I think they don't look good at the bottom anymore, but
No.
they look okay. All right, so it's a shot. So equal parts each one of those.
Right.
And so cheers, everybody.
Now, you made us a large amount of this. You probably put about 3 ounces of alcohol in these glasses because we have larger glasses. We don't have shot glasses.
Yeah.
So it should be said that this is not a cocktail. So don't sit there and sip on it. It's not meant for
no,
that.
don't sip it.
You
take
throw
it down.
You throw this back, and when you throw it back, it tastes fine.
This is like a woo girl shot.
And you follow it with a nice little pony Budweiser as well. I thought
That's
that
right,
was nice with goes with the film because
We sent Jay on a 20-mile hunt to find these tiny little Budweisers.
And in
to
Jay's
take
all
hands,
over.
it looks
Fairless Hills
miniature.
into Mooresville into Yardley, just all trying to find
No one
the
knows
right
where those
place.
places
Yeah,
are, Jay. 20 miles. We sent you 20 miles to get them is what it comes down to. Because apparently no one drinks pony buds. Like, people just want real buds.
Only Howard.
But yeah, that's the best thing to chase this
I
with.
should have went to the nearest strip club.
You should have. Oh, yeah, you should have.
They have pony deals all the time there, right?
And the reason for the pony buds is because when Howard is in his apartment on Duck World, they drink pony buds, these tiny little Budweisers. And when he gets to the apartment in in Cleveland, when he gets to Leah Thompson's apartment, she hands him a beer. He's like, "Oh, big boy beer." It's just a regular sized beer. So yeah, I thought that was a nice touch, Rob.
So I mean, it was. I thought we'd do cocktails all the time, but a nice shot every now and then I think would go well. I thought the blue curacao makes it that blue color, so that's why I call it the duck pond. I thought it was good.
Of course, making a triumphant return, we got Swedish fish at the bottom.
It's going to be our bane of this show, I think.
Now, should I eat those or no?
Yeah, go ahead. They don't look as bad as they did. When
I
put
don't
them
think
in.
they got as soggy as the other ones did.
Okay.
Nope.
You're right.
Nope. Don't eat them.
Oh man.
Don't do it.
All right, Dave just attempted to take a bite of one.
Yep. It
Did not work out for him.
All right, so Swedish fish are barred from the bottom of all shots and
I think
drinks
they're
on the
barred
show.
from every
All right,
drink.
well,
we
you
have
did it
from
so
now
no one
on.
else has to, Dave.
That's right. Took one for the team,
Yes.
as I always do. Jay is sitting there chewing, just chewing on his,
Oh my God.
just yeah.
It's not as bad as when Dave made it, but
I understand that what we're doing. We're describing something terrible to you and say. I mean, I know you can't audibly hear how terrible our faces
I think
look.
we all heard the reaction though.
But the shot itself, taken as a shot, is good. Just leave the Swedish fish alone.
Yeah.
Please. All right, so coming up next, we are going to break down Howard the Duck scene by scene. We're going to talk about some of our favorite moments from the film, some of the stuff that worked, some of the stuff that didn't work, and absolutely some of the creepiest shit that is in this fucking movie. So stay tuned.
What do you think you'd like to eat?
I no longer need human food. I am now one of the dark overlords of the universe.
If you could tune back into reality for a second.
I am not Jennings anymore.
All right, so welcome back. For those of you who don't know, we actually have Howard the Duck on in the background right now, sound off. So we're not going to really be referencing what's on the screen, but it is just kind of helpful visual reference while we're talking about it. So this film starts off very weird, and it even pays homage to another George Lucas film, right? So Rob brought up when we saw the scene that he's like, oh look, twin suns, just like Tatooine. It's not twin suns, it's twin moons. Twin moons over Washington D.C. On Duck World, and I thought that was kind of cool. And then we're treated to a complete bevy of duck puns on every sign, and even
Tons of puns.
of puns. And Spielberg and Lucas, like even in Howard's apartment, he has posters up, and it's for Spielberg and Lucas films, and they're all changed.
And a
into duck
W.C.
puns.
Fields one for some reason. For some reason, there's a parody of that.
It's very strange, and
some duck nudity. As
I was
we
saying, and that is where we're treated to like the first. So this film was rated PG.
Yes.
And we're treated to the first
This is a different time, though,
thing
Dave.
that is kind
A
of
different type
a
of
different,
PG.
Yeah, a different type.
that is creepy. Yeah, where
An 80s PG.
Yeah.
well, I mean, in 1975, Jaws is rated PG.
Right.
It was rated PG. Despite the fact that
Violent
there is literally
movie.
a part where a 10-year-old kid
Yes.
is bitten in half and
Yeah.
blood
Well, it
is just
yeah.
shooting out of his.
It was Temple of Doom that
into the air.
Temple of Doom that changed everything.
Well, Temple of Doom was rated PG, and then what happened was because of its popularity, because so many parents took their kids to see it, they did have to make a PG-13 rating after that. So it was because of that the PG-13 rating was made. But
even though Howard the Duck is PG, we get some sweet duck
and this
nudity.
is after that. It still gets a PG rating, despite the fact that he's looking at Play Duck, where it has duck boobs at it, a full duck centerfold, and then when Howard is mysteriously ripped from his apartment through the sky and lands in Cleveland.
Yes.
As he's breaking through all the walls, all the plaster and everything like that, he goes right past a masturbating female duck.
Well, we don't know if she was masturbating, but she was definitely.
That's
She was definitely having a little fun with it.
You may have brought
she was in the
some of
bathtub
your,
with a drink.
Yeah.
I mean, draw your own conclusions.
Either way, you can see it. And not to mention the very steamy scene with Leah Thompson later on in the movie, where there's almost some bestiality going on.
Interracial.
Yes, well, something.
Interspecies.
Yeah. There's some risque moments in this movie.
Intercosmic, interspecies,
Yeah.
something, inter-raw.
It's just wrong. all of it.
So, I mean,
But Leah Thompson, as I was saying,
Well, she says several times during the movie that he's her boyfriend.
right.
yeah, she introduces him as such. And that's something that I never really understood throughout the film, whether that was just like a little joke that she just kept going with Howard, or whether that was actually the case.
I think she
or
did
whether
have
that's something that's left over from the comics.
Right, I think it is from the comics a little. I mean, they're a duo in the comics, the two of them.
Yeah.
They definitely have some feelings. Well, lots of feelings. She has feelings for him.
Well, yeah, they do care about each other.
Yeah. So whether or not there's sex involved or not, there's definitely something. Yeah.
So one of the first things that when you look at the film, the special effects are good. Like they're good. They're
They
not
do
bad.
hold up. They
Towards
do.
the end, there's some bad special effects.
Yeah.
But even the miniature stuff, the stop animation, I
But
like
again,
that.
you got to take it for the time. Though.
Yeah.
You really got to take it for that time. For the 80s during this time, these are special effects that do hold up for this type of film.
I made a joke a few minutes before we started recording, but George Lucas has gone back to add blinking into Ewoks so they look less dead and lifeless.
Special editions, yeah.
But they got it right here.
Yeah.
This duck blinks. Like it blinks. It is believable enough that is a duck. It doesn't.
Yeah.
You don't look at that and go, God, that's a shitty costume. Like,
And you do have to appreciate that it was hell.
It's a
filming this
creepy
movie.
costume, though. It's kind of creepy.
It is a bit creepy. Yes. I
You're
see where
seeing
Jay's
a
coming from
full-size
there, yeah.
duck standing up,
Yeah.
and even the way he kind of is like hunched over a little bit too, like with his little duck butt hanging out.
Yeah.
It looks like a duck. The
But
way
just,
he's standing, it looks like a duck.
It does.
if it looks like a duck, quacks like a
Yeah.
duck, it must be a duck.
But just from watching, documentaries on the making of it and reading up on it, I mean, it was hell to make this movie, especially with, what they had available to them at the time. It was just, you do have to appreciate, all the different actors that, that played Howard and the way they had to film it and things like that. I just think it's kind of fascinating in a way to think of that when you're watching it.
To do all this that they did for this whole film in this kind of a costume,
Right.
where, I mean, he's got blinking eyes, like you said. He's got a great big bill.
Yep.
There couldn't have been eye slots in here.
Animatronics along with
Where is the character
costume, right.
inside of this? Where is he looking? Where is he seeing? I
Nowhere.
mean,
Everything had to be individually
he was
controlled.
in the
yeah.
dark the whole time.
Right.
So he's doing this whole...
It's harder than it
looking
looks,
like a
pretty
real
much.
person,
Yeah.
where he's not seeing a single thing.
It's harder than it looks is what it comes down to.
So the character visually looks good for his time. What I don't like is Howard has zero characterization, or at least very little. We know that we find out through his exposition later on that he went to medical school, but he got sick of fitting society's expectations of him, his mom and dad's expectations of him, and he joined a band, and that didn't really pan out. So he was just kind of like your average working stiff. So he was really a nobody on his planet until he came to Earth.
Speaking of stiff, we got a great scene with Leah Thompson in the background right now. I hate to go there, but I think this is part of the reason I watched it a lot as a kid. I just really look at her in this movie.
Liked her and her.
Yeah,
Look
this
at
is
this.
this is her in her prime. That's
I mean,
for
yeah,
sure.
Leah Thompson,
Like jumping on
obviously-
that bed
Yeah,
right there in
come on
that
now.
scene. Yeah.
Obviously,
Regardless of there being a duck involved, I mean,
Leah Thompson's one of my all-time, 80s crushes.
Crushes,
Like,
definitely,
I always had a crush on her ever since, I saw Back to the Future.
Future, yeah.
even with
Yeah.
the 80s hair, she still looks good.
Yeah, and one of the things I read
was
was
that a perm or what?
I don't know
What
what
is
that
that?
it was
is.
It's like
crimped.
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 Ah.
Crimping. But so
that
I
up,
was reading.
kids.
It took so much time just for her hair. It took almost 2 hours for him to do her hair for
I read that too,
scenes
yeah.
in this film. Like 2 hours.
Just like every high school girl at that time.
I guess so. Yeah.
So duck
Just
alone is
cans of hairspray. She even attributed to it destroying her hair. This
Right.
movie with how much they
Yeah,
were
she
doing.
was saying she should have just wore a wig.
She should. Yeah, They offered for her to wear a wig, and she said no. She wanted them to style her hair, and they styled her hair, and she's pretty sure that it
regretted it.
destroyed it. Yeah. But I mean, since we're watching this scene, their relationship, it's never really discussed, and I'm not sure if that's an intentional thing throughout the film, where they just never discuss.
I think. Yeah,
Was she going there and
I think they wanted to tiptoe around it a bit.
Yeah.
They didn't really want to come out and say anything. That could be perceived as obsene, I guess. But
Duck tits is where they draw the line.
Yeah.
duck tits is where they draw the line. That's
Yeah.
true.
Plus, it brings
But
up a
little
whole
winks
lot
and
of.
nods, like she's like teasing him. He's saying that he's tired, and then all of a sudden his feathers on his head pop up, like
Yeah,
like a
and
brush or
then
something
afterwards
like
she
that.
finds the
Yeah.
feathers in the bed, almost like he's like.
It also brings up some anatomy questions as
Yeah.
well, because
Well,
we know that.
What do we find in the wallet? Yeah,
Well,
true,
so
yeah.
we know that he has a penis. We know it's quite
It's a
small
sexual
because
creature,
there is
yeah.
a condom in it, but it's a very small condom. But anything you know
Egg-shaped.
about anatomy of birds, they don't have an outward penis. They're not mammals. Therefore, their penis is hidden inside of a coicula. So.
Well, he's a humanoid duck.
Whoa. That was a big word right
Yeah,
there.
someone did some research before this.
I mean, it's the same thing all reptiles and all birds have.
And back on that scene, why did these people just walk into a house?
Well, that's another
All right,
interesting
first
thing.
off, it's not a house. This is some
It's an artist's
shitty
loft,
Yeah,
okay?
it's a shitty rundown loft that her music manager, her band's manager, has acquired for her. She's pretty much a squatter.
Yeah,
So
okay.
so therefore, I don't even think there's a front door.
Okay, makes sense then.
That was such one of those cool spaces, though, like the first Ninja Turtles movie where all the kids
Yep.
hung out. Like one of those is like really
Yep.
cool. Like when
Like
you're
New
a
York
kid,
lofts.
when
Yeah.
you're like a kid, you'd be like, oh, I want to hang out there, you know. Especially with Leah Thompson.
Sam Rockwell, Teenage
Yeah.
Mutant Ninja Turtles,
yeah.
regular or menthol?
I always wanted to hang out there when I was a kid, but anyway.
I never did.
Really? It seems so cool.
No, it looks like a terrible
Come on.
idea.
Arcade games can't go wrong. Skateboarding, anyway.
The bastardization and indoctrination of youth by Shredder.
Well, you know that too, but
Steal TVs and I will be your
I was
father.
behind the scenes. But anyway, speaking of the scene, because we have it on and we keep referencing it, it is interesting that 45 minutes into the movie is when Jennings shows up.
Yeah, Jeffrey Jones.
Jeffrey Jones himself, and it's funny because that's the part I always think of. Jeffrey Jones in this movie, he just gives such a great performance. I think such a creepy character.
He's a
too.
creepy character in everything.
Yeah.
Like,
he's
that's
a creepy-
unintentional.
creepy-looking
Yeah.
guy.
So first off,
Unintentional.
it's creepy that when he's in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, it's extremely creepy with his obsession
Stalking after the
of
kid.
Ferris.
To go into the house.
But
Yeah.
even in the movie, they call it out. Everyone's like, "You're going too far." You know, like this is Ferris. He gets away with things. Just let it alone. Not this time, Grace. Grace.
Grace!
And then he's a complete eccentric in Beetlejuice. So I mean, he's just a very very strange.
He's good at playing those kind of characters.
He's good
for a reason.
And Jennings, I'm not sure if he really is one of those characters. Not in this.
He gets turned into it.
Tim Robbins is more of the eccentric
Oh, yeah.
in this film. But yes, he does get turned into this type of character.
Dark Overlord. He must have had a ball playing this role. I mean, come on.
And that voice.
In any of these roles. I
Yeah.
mean, it looks like he had fun every single role he
Yeah,
played.
exactly.
I mean, he was an older kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's not going to be the heartthrob that everyone's expecting.
Sure.
You know, so he had to have a ball playing all these
Right.
roles.
So I mean, we got off track quite a bit. So Howard gets pulled to Earth mysteriously in the beginning. He falls into an alley where he finds Leah Thompson being assaulted, possibly raped.
Yes.
And
Very
then,
close, yeah.
And then he obviously rescues her. She takes
From a
takes him
couple
back to
punks.
her loft.
Using duck food, doesn't he?
What's that?
Yes, he does.
Duck
quack
food. Yes,
quack
quack
food.
food.
Quack
Yeah.
food. Quack food.
Which is from the comics, which I appreciated.
And then he's talking about getting home and stuff like that. She finds his wallet. She does start to kind of believe him based on the contents of his wallet, that it says he's from Washington, D.C. and all this stuff. And then, you know, he kind of has to resolve himself that he's just going to be a stranger in a strange world. And he goes to find
World he
job.
never made.
He goes to find a job. And that's another creepy scene because when the lady is trying to find him a job, she's a big lady.
Yeah, what
she
is with
bends
that
over.
scene? That's a
He
weird
stares
scene.
at her ass
Yeah.
and he's like, oh.
Isn't that
He bite it or something.
isn't that
bite her-
another homage to the comics as well?
Well,
I seem to recall there was some comic where maybe the later comics. I remember
He was a
reading
bit of a
something.
horn dog in the comics.
Yeah.
I don't remember that exact.
He was about to bite her ass.
Yeah,
No, he was gonna bite her
I
ass.
remember seeing a comic where he was actually particularly in.
Yeah.
No, it was during. I was reading Civil War.
Okay.
And it was in one of the comics, later comics during Civil War, in one of the smaller ones in between with one of the other ones.
Where he's just a working
Where
stiff trying to get a job?
Yeah, he's getting a job.
Yeah.
And he's in an office just like that.
Right.
That's always Howard the Duck in the Marvel comics.
He's always trying to get. Yeah.
Yeah,
new job.
it's that he's in the comics. It's that he's so different, and he's meant to be like this different, you know, character. But his problems are literally everyday problems. Where they talk about Spider-Man has everyday problems. That's an everyday person
Howard's just trying to survive.
who can traverse the city with webs and superpowers.
He's not a duck that can't
He is
hide
literally
himself.
a duck with no powers.
Yeah.
On a world.
He's not a
where-
superhero.
Yeah.
He's not.
Well, that's the thing that we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but something that holds over from the comics is I did like how in the movie it shows how the people are actually like the real weirdos in a way.
Yeah.
Just like the street toughs and people, the way they look at him and
The street toughs.
the way they act and stuff. I don't know.
Is that what they taught you in film school?
Yeah.
It's like anytime you have a ne'er-do-well in your film,
Well, if
they
it-
should be they are called street toughs.
If it was the 80s, yes, they are street.
Yes.
But
New York, no, I mean Cleveland, but you could be
Cleveland.
just as easy New York street toughs.
Cleveland
But that was a big
city.
that was always a big point in the comics.
How
that,
can this be in Cleveland and there not be the only reference to the Cleveland Indians is Tim Robbins' hat.
Yeah.
That was a big point in the comics that like Howard was the normal one. Everyone else was weird,
Right.
That's
right.
kind of the hairless apes, as he called them. So I like that they incorporated some of that in the movie. We'll get into that later.
But it's not satirical at all. This film
not-
is
yeah,
which Howard the Duck
not
was an
cynical,
extremely
yeah.
satirical, cynical
Yeah.
book. This is not. It's very contemporary.
well, should we get into it? Or?
No, we'll get into it later on.
We'll get into it later.
So after failed attempts at jobs where another creepy scene, he is a jizmop boy. I can only assume that Howard becomes a jizmop boy.
Yes.
At some sort of sex club.
What the hell
Some
is that
weird
place?
sex.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hot tub place. Like
Hot-
what? I don't
yeah,
understand.
what you rent the hot tub by the
I
hour?
guess
and
so. Do those
Do it
places
in a hot
exist?
tub? Or?
I have no clue. It's Cleveland, 1986.
Yeah, I mean,
it possibly could have.
It was basically Thunderdome, I guess.
Yeah.
So he quits his job because the guy running it throws him into a hot tub
Yeah.
to clog a drain, which they never show what clogged it, but I'm assuming it was a pair of panties.
Who knows?
I don't know. There was two people in the hot
Yeah.
tub at the time.
Right.
I'm sure if you're going
They
to
didn't even
unclog a
stop
hot
when he
tub,
was in there.
No, they didn't even stop.
If you're going to unclog a hot tub, you want to make sure it's empty before you do so. I'm
She
sure.
just kept
but-
on moaning. Right,
Oh
right
yeah,
through Howard
yeah,
being
terrible moaning too.
Oh yeah, and it's like he's just kissing her neck.
I mean, and just before that scene, as we were watching it just a moment ago, like when he's walking up and in that scene, you're seeing the two people right in front of you. Like she's almost fully naked right in front of you as well. Like she's slightly covered,
Yeah,
but I mean, you can see some boobie there almost. No nipple, but you can
Well,
see
can we
some
say
boobie.
that?
some side boob.
Oh, okay.
Some
You can
side
say
boob.
you can say side boob. Yeah.
Side boob. Yep.
And this after he quits that job, that's what brings him back on the doorstep of Beverly, and that is where we were talking about that very creepy scene where she pretend seduces him after she finds the tiny condom in his wallet. Jennings busts in, breaks it all up, and we find out what brought Howard to Cleveland. It was they were doing a science experiment with a spectrographogople Google.
Some generic science
Some generic
gobbledygook.
science machine. And that actually opened up a portal which dragged only Howard in, nothing else, just dragged
just
him in
Howard.
and brought him to Earth. And he's pretty sure that they can reverse the polarity of it and send Howard back. So they go to this lab, and Howard shows up just after the aftermath of some disaster had happened. When they reversed the polarity, they wound up bringing something else down, something that possesses Jennings. And
That was pretty
that
I'm a little
was
sick,
the
so that's probably why.
what are they the ancient ones, the great evil? What are they called?
Dark Overlord.
The Dark Overlords, which I
looked like huge lobster things.
actually
crabs,
watching
and-
it. First off, the word like Dark Overlords, like who calls themselves the Dark Overlords? Because everyone's the hero of their own story. So who goes and it's just like,
Well,
you know
they're the
what?
only ones there too.
Yeah. It
We're
could
the
be
Dark
seen as a-
Overlords.
It's a plan. I think that's just the name.
Yeah.
No, so he does say that they are ancient beings that inhabited the universe and eventually were relocated to that unknown region that they were put into that other dimension and hidden away there until now. He's the first one to get out because of Jennings' invention, and the whole crux of the film is now that Jennings is that Dark Overlord that has possessed him.
They're trying to bring him back, right?
Right. So it changes Jennings physically, and it changes his voice to a hilarious extent. He craves power.
Yes. That's all he cares about.
Right. So obviously, Howard, Beverly, and Jennings they sneak away from the police and they go tearing across Cleveland.
On the longest chase ever in a movie.
Right. And they wind up
takes forever.
they wind up in a diner, and they're still Beverly and Howard are still talking to Jennings like he's Jennings, and that's when he's like, Jennings is no more.
I'm not Jennings anymore.
I'm not Jennings anymore.
Which my dad always used to say for some reason.
Well, what
He's a
about
weird
this
guy.
cop in here? This is the same cop from CSI. Is
Yes,
that
it is.
all he does? Is play cops?
Of course.
Yeah, well,
like
yeah.
like
Like
lead
Carl
cops,
Winslow,
too.
yeah.
Like
What else did Dennis Franz do with his career?
yeah, that's true. But that's all I remember seeing him as.
And
is
that guy is a
cop.
dick, too. I
He's
didn't
got
realize
he's
that.
got hair in this one, but not in the other one. But
Then in that diner is where we get to see just how powerful Jennings is.
let's just talk about the diner for a minute, though. Come on,
diner.
what
Well,
sushi and Cajun?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds...
I mean that's a
That's-
combination.
that's a
right
dream
there.
combo, yeah.
So there's a little bit of
in
like
a diner too.
Yeah.
so there's a little bit of satirical comedy hidden
Yeah.
in there, right there. You know, with
There's not much of it, but that
Asian
is, yeah.
fusion,
Asian
just,
fusion.
just done wrong.
Yeah.
Just done so wrong. So Howard runs afoul of the clientele.
Runs afoul.
Foul.
Whoa, that's a pun.
You did that on purpose.
Drink.
I didn't do it on purpose,
really?
but it was great.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a good pun.
Okay.
I wish I could take credit for it. So Howard runs afoul of the clientele of this strange Asian fusion truck stop.
Wherever the
Truck
hell
stop
they are.
diner.
Truck stop diner, and they wind up tying him down, and they're gonna kill him, and I assume cook him and eat him because it's a
Well, there's plenty of ducks hanging up if you
Yeah.
look. Yeah.
so they're gonna kill him and eat him.
I'm
else
surprised
would
that
he do,
didn't
Dave?
that he didn't even like quack at that either. By the way, there's another pun, but he didn't even like quack at that. Like he saw all these
Right,
ducks
right.
hanging up in the
Well, they try to serve him eggs in the diner, and he gets, he gets very...
He gets very upset over the
he was very
eggs.
upset.
Yeah,
like the egg thing, but like the ducks that were hanging up there, like the crispy duck, no,
Yeah.
didn't even phase him.
and now we get a little bit of preview of Jennings' power, where he's able to subdue all the bad guys in the restaurant. He can shoot electricity from his eyes and start fires with his hands, and he has telekinetic powers. Like, they don't explain what he can and can't do. He's gonna do whatever it takes
just-
to meet the needs of that
He's
scene.
just evil,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
So Beverly and Howard try to escape, and Jennings kidnaps Beverly because he's going to need a host for the rest of the the rest of the Dark Overlords.
And what better person?
inhabit. Yeah, than Beverly. I mean, worst comes to worst.
could be worse.
Yeah, at least you get to the Jennings. Maybe Jennings is thinking.
Hey, she was already like announced that she's into a species, sort of
Right.
stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Speaking of which, we get a little bit of tentacle porn when he's driving that truck, and
Oh, yeah, that
he
was-
he pulls out the cigarette lighter, Jennings, and Jennings has that giant long tongue thing with the weird hook on the end of it that he shoves right into the
Yeah.
plug. But before he does that, he makes sure that he wraps it up and down, you know, Leah Thompson's face.
CJ, you didn't even get to the creepy parts yet. The creepy parts are coming up. I'll tell you. I was freaked out as a kid. I'm still
Like-
even looking at it.
I did see that. Yeah,
His
yeah,
makeup
like the
too, by the
trailer.
way, like
Yeah.
the goggle,
Yeah,
the
and he's,
goggle
like,
mark around his
charging
face.
his
Right,
tongue or
right.
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
this is
but
fucking creepy.
I actually they do a pretty good job of showing you the deterioration of
Jennings, yeah.
It's really, it's really
And I mean,
good.
and the Dark Overlord does, state that Jennings is dead. Like he states it in the car when
He's
they're
got
driving to the
great
diner.
bulging eyes too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says like Jennings is dead.
The red face.
Combination
and,
of the performance and the makeup. I mean, it's just something about
The
it.
over the
yeah.
top performance.
But he
Almost
gave-
like he's a silent filmmaker.
He gave it his all.
Silent
He
film
gave it
actor.
his all. I will say. Yeah.
Howard winds up hiding around the diner, posing as a lawn ornament. And the police arrive to take statements of everything that happened at the diner. And Tim Robbins, who was previously arrested at the lab by the police, escapes police custody, grabs Howard, and they take a tiny airplane.
This is the longest chase scene ever. Yeah.
20 minutes
it
of
really 20
Howard
minutes?
and no, it's at least
and
15.
he
Feels like
always
20.
has to like follow the road and stuff like that. He's like, at one point, he's like, they're flying along, and the police are almost firing at him into the little light plane thing. When you see all this like marshland right next to him, if he had just flown over the
Right.
marshland, he would have been out of
Fly
out
where
of
cars
shot.
can't drive, you jackass. And that plane ride, it just takes
It just
so
drags,
long.
yeah.
And like I almost fell asleep during that part. There was a few times where like my
I
eyes
did fall
closed.
asleep during that.
But all I hear is
Howard!
Howard, look out!
Tim Robbins
And,
at
like
his best.
that goes on
Yeah.
for 10 or 15 minutes. Just that. Just them.
Joe Roma's. I
Joe
love it,
Roma's
yeah.
Cajun Sushi. The official name. Yeah.
The name of the Asian fusion Cajun
Yeah.
fusion restaurant.
Which is some good satire there.
And eventually they do get back to the spectrometer. That's what I'm going to call it. I don't know. If
Is that what it's called?
I don't know. Spectrometer. That's what I'm
Sure.
going with. Sounds about right. I mean,
Yeah.
that's about as much thought as the writers put into it. That's for sure. And this is where Jennings tries to bring down the rest of them. And Tim Robbins tells Howard about the Deus Ex Machina that is hidden in a naval locker. We're developing some weapon. It can destroy any matter. It can actually destroy matter. It's the one thing that all science holds dear is that physics holds dear. Matter cannot be created or destroyed, but it can change. But he's telling him that he has a device that can destroy matter.
Yeah, you know matter?
It's a movie.
We can destroy it.
Isn't that what the particle collider did? And we were all worried that it was going to start a black hole.
Well, yeah.
So literally he has that in tiny ray gun form that's going to be mounted on a luggage carrier from the airport.
Of course, yeah.
And driven into Jennings so that he can kill him. And that fight scene, just like the plane scene, just
It
drags
goes on for a bit, yeah.
the fuck
But I do like
on.
the ultimate decision that he has, if he destroys a machine, he destroys his one chance to go home, which I think is pretty cool.
Right, but it's because he balked on the chance to destroy Jennings. If he just destroyed Jennings himself right away, he wouldn't have had to destroy the
Well, first
machine.
they had to go out to dinner with them, and
Yes.
but that is. I mean, are we going to talk about scenes now? Because I think that's
We've gone through scenes.
we?
No.
No, we just kinda went
we're
through the whole
peppering them
movie.
in. Yeah, we're peppering
Well,
them.
the scene in the diner is, that's what stands out to me. It's such a long scene, but I think it's well done, and all the different effects that are going on, and the story changes that are happening within it. I don't think it drags as much as the parts that come after it, but that scene's always been like a good set piece to me.
It's a scene that I didn't remember much.
Really?
Like I watched it as a
That's
kid.
what I think of. Yeah.
Yeah, the diner scene isn't what I remember. I
I think it's one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie, though.
I remember the end of the film. That's what always stood out to me. When, Jennings obviously brings down the rest of them, Howard has to destroy Jennings with the light ray, and then he destroys the spectrometer, and all of the ancient ones, or whatever they are, Dark Overlords, get sent back to their place. And I distinctly remember the Dark Overlord after it sheds Jennings' body, because it looks like a mix between a Rancor and a lobster. Just
It
had a
definitely
baby.
looks like a Rancor. Yeah. And a lobster, yeah.
And a lobster. It looks like they had a baby. And it reminds me of the Drawing of the Three, which is the second book in the Dark Tower series. I picture that's what a lobstrosity.
Yeah.
I picture that's what a lobstrosity looks like.
A little smaller, but yeah.
But yeah, that's the scene that always stood out to me. Was that last scene, and of course, the very end.
Oh, of course.
Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck. Those are the only lines to that entire movie.
Oh,
To
yeah.
the entire song.
Oh no, I actually looked up the lyrics today, and they are really dumb.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Go figure.
you're not
But,
hearing it now, but don't worry. You will hear it at the intro to this podcast.
Thank you. Well, you have to play it. I mean,
So, they got a top-notch band like that we don't know
Well,
to make that song.
I mean, watching it this time, I didn't realize how early they set up that Howard plays a guitar.
Yes.
In the very beginning, I was like, "Oh, okay." So that's why he grabs a guitar at the end, and
And
just
they
starts
also set up
wailing,
that he is the Cherry Bomb's music manager. He's their manager.
Yeah.
So,
they did set that up a little bit more.
all right. So,
I just love how again, going on with that, very 80s, like we talked about before, but they're like playing in front of like a fence.
Oh yeah, like that. Like Blues Brothers.
Like the Blues Brothers, yeah. Like,
yes.
How many places were there that you had to go to that sort of stuff where the band had to play behind
How
a
dangerous
fence?
was it? Yeah.
Yeah, how bad could it have been in these small towns like Cleveland where you had to
With-
play in
when
front
you're
of
going
a
to see
fence?
Cherry
and as we
Bomb.
know by
Yeah.
Blues Brothers, all you have to do is play Rawhide,
Right.
and you would have won the crowd
That's
over.
how you do it. Yeah.
But this must rival Blues Brothers in the amount of like cars that like crash, like police cars.
Yeah.
Like I know Blues Brothers is like still sets the record for how many police cars.
Blues
or-
Brothers 2000.
Yeah, Blues
Holds
Brothers.
that
Okay.
record.
But one of them,
We
like
don't talk about that.
like so many cars crash in this. Like the cop cars that crash in this are like there's so many of them.
That was actually why John
In that
Landis
chase.
didn't want to direct this movie. Apparently.
Yeah, we were going to
It's
talk
too
about that
similar,
coming up in the next segment.
Yeah.
John
Okay.
Landis George Lucas brought this script to John Landis first, who was A, not interested because he thought it was a terrible script, and B, was severely uninterested because he had made the Blues Brothers in 1981, and he already did the car crashing thing.
Probably using that as an excuse, but you know.
Yeah, that was his excuse because he didn't want to tell his good
Oh,
buddy.
George, I already did this.
Yeah, he didn't want to tell his good buddy that this script sucks, man. why don't you call up Hayek and Katz and tell them to they're fired. I know you went to film school with them and all, but they're fired. They suck. This film sucks. And I mean that. So favorite scenes, guys. Like favorite scenes, and then also pepper in your most disturbing and most hated scene as well, because this is not a film that I'm going to walk away and say like I enjoyed this film. I like this movie, because I don't. I didn't this time around. I enjoyed it when I was a kid. I don't like it now. So we'll start with you, Rob.
You know what?
Favorite
scene. I'm going to go with the diner.
Okay.
I know we're watching it right now, like you said. It's all on the background here. But I really do like how, like, it gives me a total 80s vibe in this diner scene. Like, going into a diner where you could still order beer, like, a lot of diners these days don't have liquor licenses anymore. So you can't order anything like that. But the whole Asian, like right now, we're showing right now, he's flipping around on, like, a short order cook's, like, wheel thing. And he's flipping right past all the ducks that are hanging up right next to him. Like, he freaked out at the eggs, but the ducks hanging up, the featherless there, he seems to not care about. So
he is running for his life, so maybe he didn't have enough time.
He's busy right now,
He's not Spider-Man.
I think this is one of my favorite parts. Least favorite, I think, not that it's a least favorite, but I think it's very, like, weird, is the almost sex scene. I have to rate that up there, thinking, like, I still don't get, was she joking, or was she just...
she was.
Yeah, no, and just how
She's
was she
into
just...
it.
Exactly, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, he was not in for it, and that's why it never happened.
Hey, love is love, man. Love is love.
But, I mean, she calls him boyfriend.
It transcends special boundaries.
That's right, man.
So, yep, there she goes. She just called him her boyfriend right then and there. You know, so...
That's disgusting, as one hillbilly exclaims.
But, yeah, no, that's what I would go with.
Mark, favorite scene, worst scene?
Favorite scene is the diner. I have to say it as well. It's what I remember the most, and there's a lot going on in the scene. It's a long scene, but a lot happens in it, and it does show, once again, how the humans are kind of the weird ones and the ones who are savages, and basically they're trying to kill him in the scene. So
it's true, and it's almost like they're showing that because he's not human, they're kind of guilt free of killing him, right?
Yeah, like we can cook him and eat him. Sure.
Yeah. There's dead ducks everywhere, and he's just a larger duck that we can make dead. And
as for least favorite scene, I mean, I guess the scene where they are being chased by the cops, I just feel like it goes on way too long, and it's fine. If they had shortened it a little bit, I think it would have been better though. At that point in the movie, you kind of just like, all right, let's get to the end. You know, we know where this is going. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to end in a showdown, and let's just get to that.
So if I had to pick one, I guess that would be it.
Jay, favorite scene, worst scene?
Jeffrey Jones. I think he still works in this movie, you know, as far as a character and an actor, and even though,
of course, the man who's a menstrual vampire.
Well,
his favorite part of this film is the pedophile.
He does have a creepy ass scene with the tongue, you know.
For those of you who only listen to Movie Cocktails on our show, we've learned that Jay is a menstrual vampire. It's just what he is. It's what he likes.
It's just, you know, Howard the Duck. I just can't. Like I said, I can't stand looking at him. I can't stand just the.
It's Howard you have the problem with. Like that's what you have the problem with is Howard.
Not Jennings.
I find him the most like. I think
he's
Howard,
adorable. Look
I think Howard is
the thing. I don't.
Is a good special effect.
It's the opposite.
I think he works in this film. I think it works to his character. I like it.
And maybe it's because of just the way everybody's interacting with him, but I can't get into
more or less creepy, Jay. If he looked like his comic book counterpart and was just wearing like a beat up suit and tie like all the time.
Actually, I do wish he was wearing that, and that's one thing.
He wears it at the end.
I don't know.
Does he wear it?
He was wearing it at the beginning too. Yeah, when he was walking through the streets.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
and he's wearing a suit and tie.
Otherwise, he's wearing that weird camo pants.
Yeah,
no,
he wears a suit and tie at the end when he plays guitar.
Okay.
All right, Jay. So Jennings is your favorite part.
Stop humanizing him. I think that would have been better.
But that's kind of the point.
That's the point
for,
of the film. That's the point, man.
Is that
Howard is human.
He's a humanoid duck.
He's just as human.
He's just like us.
He has the same emotions you and I have.
It's just the way they pulled
the same
off
parts
this movie
too.
didn't work for me. Like I don't mind that.
If you watch the whole movie, you can actually get that.
It just didn't work for me in this movie.
I got you.
That's all.
So so your least favorite part is Howard, but your favorite part is Jeffrey Jones.
But you do need to watch the movie to get that message, not just watch YouTube clips.
Just because
Jay watched this movie when he was a kid. He's seen the whole movie before.
Mr. 80s
well, in
to
that
me.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeffrey Jones is definitely 80s. For me, My favorite scene is actually the opening scene, the very first scene. Everything that goes on Duck World. Like I
do love that part.
I
Yeah.
really enjoy that. I love the homage it pays to Star Wars with the twin moons. I love
corny,
all
but,
the
yeah.
duck puns everywhere. I love that. I love that there's all these Howards walking around. Like I think what I love about that
little
is
duck with the white.
I like it. It gives you like a glimpse into his world. Which is
and the
kinda cool.
commercials. Come on, the commercials that are on TV.
Yeah, I do
are
like that
great.
part a lot.
The
yeah.
Jock Itch commercial.
That opening is cool. It shows you just enough.
Football playing ducks?
Just enough of his world, you know? It's kinda
Yeah,
cool.
and I think that's what I like. I like the a little bit of attention to detail, the world building for Howard. It helps a lot of his puns have context later on, where they're more than just duck puns. He did come from a world of duck puns, so you can almost forgive him for it.
And I like that it is basically an alternate version of our world.
Right.
Only they're ducks.
Except
the ducks, yeah.
Except we don't name everything human this and human that.
Besides that, yeah.
But on his world, everything is duck this and duck
Right.
that. What I always wonder is, where are the geese of his world? Are the geese like are they like the mortal enemies of the ducks?
Good
Like
question.
What about the chickens?
What about the chickens?
What about the
Where does sentient life end on Duck World? Like, do all birds have sentience, or is it just ducks? Because Tim Robbins has that mock-up of the human evolution timeline, and he does it for ducks, the upright walking duck,
Cro-Mag duck.
Cro-Mag duck. But that opening scene, that's my favorite scene. My least favorite scene is the airplane scene. That scene it goes on so long. That car chase is so long, and your main characters.
And where do they know where they're going in the first place?
I have no clue.
Jennings takes Beverly.
Right. So Jennings, they assume
have nowhere to go.
that Jennings is taking her back to the lab. So they're heading towards the lab, but Jennings actually goes like 3 hours in the opposite direction to hit a nuclear power plant, so he can drain all the power from that to power himself up for his final fight with Howard. And how long does their plane ride take? Because if Jennings went 1-for-1 straight shot to the lab, Howard would have beat him there flying. But instead, they went west. So how long was that flight? It seems like forever in the movie, and the whole
one of those,
the whole
plot holes
timeline
that,
falls apart right there. And you could tell that this script was probably around 80 minutes long. So they added that really long chase scene in to really pad the script out. And it's just one of those things that the pacing of the film suffers because of it. And it's too much of Tim Robbins, who his character is my least favorite character in this film. I absolutely hate him. He's like this mix between like a schwarmy business guy and like a geeky, nerdy, scientific nerd.
He's supposed to be the janitor, isn't he?
And no, he's like not even like a grad student. He's like he's trying to get his doctorate degree.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
But I mean, he's one of these guys who feels like he's friends with everybody, and he's like I got an in. Yeah, I know this guy, and it's like so he's kind of like this like almost like slimy businessman.
He's a convenient character.
Yeah, right, and that's what he is. He's a character of convenience, but he is just absolutely awful.
In the background is the horrifying
Stan Winston-esque. It's not done by Stan Winston. All
tentacle coming out of
everything was done by ILM for this film. But
cool effect though. It's definitely disgusting.
But yeah, Jennings hentai tentacles are very disturbing. But
and titillating.
So yeah, I just that was my big problem with the film was that plane scene. The duck puns get a little old, I think, and I think if you had context for this film by reading the comics and stuff like that, maybe if this was one of those things that actually paid homage to the comic instead of just taking the ideas of the comic and then trying to make their own thing out of it, you might have had a better film on your hands. But instead, it's a pale comparison to what the comic book version of Howard is, and it's just poorly written, poorly paced, poorly directed, and
it has issues. To go into some of those, I mean, comparing it to the comic book, I mean, what I was thinking is that it just kind of misses the cigar chomping, surly aspect of the character.
He does smoke a cigar.
He does smoke a cigar. He does do that in the movie, which I appreciate that they included, but. Overall, his demeanor in the comics a lot more kind of like surly and, cynical and stuff like that. They didn't really get too much of that in his character.
Yeah, in this, he's almost an angsty teenager.
Yeah, he's more like, what's going on, which is fine, because obviously that's part of it, but...
It's just a strange duck in a strange land.
In the movie itself, it misses a lot of the dark humor of the comic, because it is meant to be ridiculous, obviously. Which the movie... it taps into that a bit, but it doesn't really bring it to the forefront like the comic does.
No.
But at the same time, like I said, they did the best they could with the technology they had at the time. And it was their take on it, and it's not perfect by a long shot, but I think if you are at all interested in the comics, I think you should check them out. I think it's worth it.
Yeah, there is an omnibus and a compendium out of just the Steve Gerber stuff, which if you're going to read Howard the Duck, that's the stuff you read.
Right.
He was one of the first comic book writers to write himself into his story. Everyone who reads comics and loves comics knows that, Grant Morrison wrote himself into Animal Man. Long before that, Steve Gerber wrote himself into Howard the Duck.
It's one of those creator-owned comics that just, if you're into that kind of stuff, indie kind of stuff, like it's also Marvel, which is interesting.
Right.
Definitely check it out.
Not where the character started, Howard the Duck. He was Steve Gerber did completely create the character, and it was bought by Marvel. It was also a comic book strip in the newspaper, and then Marvel always toyed with the idea of it was a standalone comic. He just made guest spots in Man-Thing. And then he had his own magazine, which didn't do well. Yeah. His own black and white magazine by Marvel, published by Marvel, it didn't do well.
Missing from the omnibus, actually. But...
And then he also had his own standalone series, which lasted like 32 issues or something like that.
Something like that. It was a good run.
All right.
But,
and then Steve Gerber left, and there was a whole bunch of stuff, cease and desist letters from Disney, because Howard looked too much like Donald when he was drawn. So Disney definitely kept the cease and desist letter going with
They had to
with
put
that.
some pants on
They had
him.
to put some pants on, which Steve Gerber, even after he agreed to do that, didn't do it. Which is one of the reasons he was excused from Marvel. And then something I was telling Mark before we were recording, Steve Gerber got a chance to write the character again in the late 90s, I believe. He was writing for Image Comics. He was writing Savage Dragon and some other duck character. He was writing a crossover between them. He wanted to cross over with Howard the Duck and another Marvel character. Oh, Beast. He wanted to cross over with Beast from X-Men. So it was Howard the Duck and Beast. And what he did was Savage Dragon and this cosmic duck character, basically in one frame in the Marvel comics, they came through, kidnapped Howard, and then replaced Howard with an exact clone of him that was not but it was basically like the knockoff version of Howard.
It was Howard, but it wasn't Howard.
Right. So that way, Steve Gerber got to stick it to Marvel, and
it's a genius way to get around
took his
that.
character back, and it was at the time that was continuity. That Howard was trapped by Savage Dragon and them, and liberated into creator-owned comics, which was Image Comics at the time. Was all done by was all creative owned, and Marvel couldn't have the original Howard back. So I thought that was
quite
really
the
good.
creative solution to that problem.
It is, and it was done in like one or two panels. It wasn't like it was a blink and you missed it.
It wasn't a huge
right.
It's almost like he wanted them to miss it,
right?
You know?
So, and of course, Howard the Duck gained some notoriety again
recently,
with Guardians of the Galaxy
in a post-credit scene.
Post-credit scene, which was never meant to do anything more than just be a wink and a nod.
Hey, it's Howard the Duck.
Yeah, just a wink and a nod, not even to this film, just to the character.
Yeah.
By James Gunn, and that since blew Howard the Duck up a little bit.
Yeah.
Marvel.
So everyone was like, "Who is this duck? Who is this guy?"
Marvel had a go at another series with him, which failed after several issues.
Oh, is that over now?
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
It didn't really last.
He was a private eye in that one, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
He's not a character for everybody.
Yeah, for me, it's Steve Gerber as a creator. I mean,
Right.
he's passed away since then, but to me, it's. I mean, I could see other people writing him. It has to be very specific. To that
It's just one of those things where it's like it's definitely not a character for everybody. That version of the character.
Yeah.
And I think when you're talking about they kind of missed that point in this film. That would have been if they were making this film for you, Mark.
Well, no,
they were
not just for me.
Right. At the time, they were trying to appeal to a
even
wider
George
audience.
Lucas loved the comics. He was a huge fan
true.
of the comics. I think they just kind of missed the mark.
Right, but George Lucas also used to be the guy that was anti-establishment until he became the establishment.
Right. But I mean, Howard in the comics is very anti-establishment.
Right. But what I mean is they had to make this for a general audience.
Right. Yeah.
What they failed to do.
I don't really hold that against them.
Right. They failed to find the balance.
Yeah.
In it, they went too general for their audience with this.
I think that's the issue.
To the point where a lot of people feel that this is a kid's movie, and it's really not.
No,
it's not supposed to be. I mean, the comics are more geared towards adults, I would say, than the movie.
Absolutely.
For sure,
All right, so we've waxed intellectual as much as we can about Howard the Duck.
And the plane scene is still going on in the background.
How we got this far and went this in depth with literally an extremely shallow movie.
But he's a deep character. I would argue that.
He's a deep character.
It's very existential.
The humans are extremely shallow in this film. All of them.
Yes.
They basically expel what they want.
Yeah.
They say what they want out of the situation. Except for Beverly. She just wants Howard to be safe and happy.
She just wants love.
That's
She
right.
wants some duck love, yeah.
Some duck love.
All right, so coming up, we're going to go behind the scenes on some of this. We're going to talk about the making of Howard the Duck, how George Lucas got involved, and how this movie started Pixar. Yeah, you might. That's
What?
That's called a tagline. So stay tuned.
It's like I'm transforming inside. I'm afraid I'm about to become something else. Yes, transformation is complete. I am now someone else.
And welcome back. All right, so we're going to get into some of the behind-the-scenes stuff for Howard the Duck. And one of the things I was teasing was that George Lucas basically had to sell he basically had to sell off ILM after making this film. This film cost $36 million to make. It didn't nearly make enough back. It was critically panned, and it was a huge flop. And it was Universal's like tentpole movie that for the summer that this came out. So a lot of money went into this, and a lot of George Lucas's money, who he did executive produce it, went into it. And because of its flop, because he wound up having to sell ILM to his friend, who was just doing him a favor by buying ILM, and his friend was Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs, who bought it from George Lucas, then turned it into Pixar, which then was partnered with Disney and then was later acquired by Disney and gave us beloved, animated films that we love today, except for Jay, who on our Never Have I Liked It fucking said he doesn't like Finding Nemo, which is baffling to me. Right? As this man's wearing, man Rob is wearing a Monsters University hat right now. He's wearing a Monsters University hat.
Proudly.
Everybody knows that I can't get into animation. It's just.
It might be why you didn't like this film too much. I think this film might ask you to take some imagination leaps.
I struggle with a lot of fantasy stuff.
You do, except for Game of Thrones.
Well, right.
Because there's just enough tits to keep you interested.
It's very grounded.
Well, what about this one then?
That's true.
Jay,
there's duck tits in this one.
It's in this one.
It was creepy. I guess they're a little
It was close second place. My favorite scene.
There's, I guess you just don't like your tits with feathers on them. I guess. Huh? Clearly, you've never met a stripper.
And there was a little bit of a silence there, because I don't think that was anything for any of us.
Well, I mean, clearly, Jason just never fond of strippers wearing feather boas, because that's tits with feathers, right?
More or less the same thing.
But what I'm getting at is Pixar wouldn't exist, at least in its form that it is now, if it wasn't for this movie being such an utter failure. So talk about, taking your lemons and making lemonade.
Oh, absolutely. I got a little side story. I know this is totally off, but I remember back, similar to this, that right after Steve Jobs got it, I was taking a computer science class at my first time trying university. I've tried twice, by the way. But my first time trying university back home, I went to James Cook University in North Queensland, and I was doing a class with my friend of a computer science class. And our lecturer came in and he showed us this little video and he goes, I want to show you something. He goes, this is going to be the future.
Was it Flexo?
No, it was actually that picture of the light doing the jump.
Yeah, that's Flexo.
Jumping on the letter I. And he goes, this is going to be the future of animation. And at the first one I was watching, I was like, what? This is nothing.
Yeah, and everyone's like, bull. I remember when Toy Story came out, and they're like, "This is the future of animation."
Exactly.
People were like, "No one's ever going to replace, cell animation. No one's ever going to replace pencil and paper and stuff like that." You don't see pencil and paper animated films anymore.
Nope.
What
was it? I think I read somewhere that it was the Frog Princess one. What was that one called?
Princess and the Frog.
Princess and the Frog. That was the last one. Yeah.
Is that really the last one?
Yeah, that was the last pencil and.
That was like 2010 or something like that. 2009. It is.
It needs to come back.
I would love to see hand drawn animation. And while we're on that subject, This was always seen by Hayek, Katz, and Lucas as an animated film. However, contractual obligation when they purchased the character from Marvel, when they got the rights, was that it had to be a live-action film. And Lucas wanted to make this film so much that he's like, we can do it. We can do it. ILM will do all of the special effects for it.
May have worked better as an animated film.
It definitely would have worked better as an animated film.
Yeah.
I think you would have bought into the crazy world a little bit more if you were seeing it in cartoon form. Because I think that for people, and I'm not speaking for Jay, but for people like Jay, there is a suspension of disbelief that comes with animation. You are able to take greater leaps if it's not told through live action.
But he doesn't like animation, he said.
Right.
Right? You don't like? Do you like animation or not?
No.
He's never liked. Wait, he has liked one animated film, and I got him to watch it. Batman: Mask of the Phantasm.
Oh, that's a great movie.
I did, but I'm a huge Batman fan.
And maybe the best Batman movie.
That does help, and I think that they did a great job with the character in that film, along with the Joker.
That's what I said. It's the best characterization of all those characters.
Yeah,
that was the best part about it.
And Mark, it isn't. It's not that it might just be the best Batman film. It is the best Batman film.
Best Batman
just bought it on Blu-ray, and I watched it in
on Blu-ray now.
full high def.
It just came out.
Just came out about a month ago.
All right, I have to pick that up.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but yeah, this film was almost an animated film, and very well could have been if it wasn't for its contractual obligations. If it was animated, I think things like duck tits and over sexualization, speciality sex,
Made it worked a little better.
wouldn't have been in the film. I don't think.
You don't think so?
It would have been marketed more towards kids.
Well, then maybe
which is something that the character possibly doesn't lend to.
Yeah, maybe I don't know if that would have worked then.
Right, and Steve Gerber was not a consultant on this whatsoever.
Yeah, I did wonder about his involvement.
He was not involved. He was not involved.
Not at all.
Nope. He was not a character consultant.
No, he wasn't a fan.
No, yeah, it's just a story by script, and that's it. That's because
he does get a credit.
What Howard does in this film, being a hero and destroying the Dark Overlords and stuff like that. That's not Howard the Duck. That's not what Howard would do in the comics.
He's just trying to get by.
Yeah,
he got caught up in.
He would have never gotten in this situation to begin with.
Try not to, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's one of the main differences, and that's one of the.
But they had to make it a heroic tale, and
absolutely,
in the vein of other Marvel comics and whatnot. But
anybody got anything else that they want to bring up about?
I didn't know much about Howard the Duck before watching it. Like I said, I'd seen him in a couple of comics, but I mean, I enjoyed the movie. No, I really did. It was interesting. Mm-hmm. The character of Howard was really good. I think that was one of the best parts of the movie for me. It was that this is a guy, and I said it before. He's like in a costume that I don't think he can see. He's acting like a normal. That's still boggling me. That where is his eye slots? That he was doing all of this technically blind.
Right.
He was acting like a real person, but acting it blind.
What bothers me is that this is a film produced by George Lucas, and it's not Warwick Davis in that suit.
It does bother me. But even from a sheer just special effects standpoint, I mean, it is interesting. Just thinking about how they made it and what they went through to make it and whatnot.
I mean, and when you think $36 million, that's a lot.
Right.
But it might have been a real lot for that time. But
it was.
That's nothing compared to what a movie. I mean, that's a B movie these days. That's $36 million. I mean,
that's a Jay's Indie Corner film these days. $36 million.
Essentially,
Wind River probably cost $36 million to make.
Drop in the fountain. Yep.
Especially with some of the actors, Leah Thompson and
big names.
Tim Robbins,
Tim Robbins wasn't that big of a name at the time, but Leah Thompson
he was just starting out, I believe.
Jeffrey Jones was a character actor at the time, and obviously Leah Thompson was the big name in this. She was the big draw. She was the big get for this film. Strangely, I remember reading that she had to audition, which it's because remember. She thought she was auditioning for the blockbuster of the film. Right. She thought she was auditioning for something that was going to go on to be another Back to the Future.
Watching the interviews for it, I think she had the best attitude actually going into it. She was just like, it was silly. It was fun.
Right.
I had a good time with it. That's how she looked at it.
I think everybody else was looking at the merits of the character of
Right.
Howard the Duck, the way me and you, Mark, are looking at the merits of this character.
But I mean, she got it in a way.
Right.
She got it like the ridiculousness of it all.
Where Rob is just like, I had fun with it. Well, fuck it. I didn't
keyboard
expect
lady.
anything from
and
it.
it is fun.
That keyboard girl, the one that plays the keyboard in
Holly
the band.
Robinson Pete.
Yeah, that's who I thought it was.
You might remember her from Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
That's what it was. Hanging with Mr. Cooper, and she was on the Celebrity Apprentice as well.
Yes.
This is her first movie, I believe.
Ah.
But yeah, for giving final thoughts, I mean, I did enjoy it. Like I said to Dave earlier, I mean, even more than I thought I would, because I thought it was maybe just nostalgia. But I did, it's an entertaining film. And, the primary thing they got wrong is that they are missing that existential crisis that the comic book, focuses on and kind of makes the whole thing work.
It's a little bit too heavy for a PG movie, my friend.
But, right. And I get that, and I understand what they were trying to do with it. But that's kind of what makes the character work in a way. So lacking that in the movie does change things a lot. But it's a fun movie, and for the time, I think it was pretty damn good.
For me, I'm the complete opposite. For me, this movie is all nostalgia. The only reason I was kind of excited to do it was to go back and watch something I haven't seen since I was a kid. This movie represents Saturday mornings with Mom, as a lot of films that we talk about do. People listen to the show know that that's where my love of Star Wars, where my love of Indiana Jones and stuff like that comes from. This is one of those films that we would watch. Not one we ever owned, though, because I don't think anyone liked it that much in my house.
Probably taped it off TV on VHS or something.
We did have HBO all throughout growing up, and anytime a movie came on, my dad was notorious for taping 3 films at a time. I actually had a podcast idea a long time ago, which will never come up again. But you remember you used to get like 6-8 hour long VHSs, and you would put them in. You would record a movie. What my dad used to do was he would record 3 movies on it, and those 3 movies would then be on one VHS in your collection. And because of that format, I, to this day, and I know I've told this story a bunch of times on the show, especially when we talked about Ghostbusters and stuff, to this day, I cannot watch those movies without watching the movie that would follow it up. And my biggest example is, for me, Ghostbusters and Gremlins were on the same VHS for me. So to this day, if I watch Ghostbusters, I have to immediately watch Gremlins right after it, because as a kid, that's ingrained in me. And that's something that kids won't understand today.
Well, you know what they won't understand is pan and scan. I think it was the second Ghostbusters movie. No, the first one, actually. We had it taped off TV, and it was all pan and scan.
Right, because the widescreen format
being
didn't
widescreen,
fit.
yeah. So that completely changes the entire movie. And if you look back on it now, it's like a completely different movie.
Because kids, let Uncle Dave rap to you for a second. TVs used to be a perfect square. They didn't used to be widescreen. When you had a 20-inch TV, that's because it was 20 inches tall, 20 inches wide, 20 inches diagonal.
But it made for a completely different experience, though.
It did, yeah.
Even the editing and everything changes, yeah.
That's right. The scenes are shrunken down. You sometimes get extremely elongated characters. And from one scene to another, a close-up, the character would look completely normal, but on a wide shot,
they would see everyone in the frame.
Right. They would be elongated because they had to compress that image into a square thing, and that's something that only existed when you watched films on TV.
Yeah.
But nowadays, because most flat screens, every flat screen is a wide screen. Just about. They're
which is how it should
widescreen
be.
format. Yeah.
Right.
It's just amazing.
Ben Burt doing the sound effects?
Ben Burt was ILM, so Skywalker Sound, which is one of the reasons why this film had to do well for George Lucas. Just to bring up another thing, he just finished building a massive, I think it was like 80 acres, maybe it's 80 acres outside of San Francisco, called Skywalker Ranch.
Yeah.
He had just finished building that, and he was fucking broke. He was actually broke. So he produced this film. Well, I mean, broke.
He made Howard the Duck? What?
Broke for George Lucas, which is still more money than we would ever see.
Make a movie about a duck.
Which is why after this flopped, he ended up having to sell ILM, because he was broke after making Skywalker Ranch. My final thoughts in this film, though, are I don't hate it. I just never have any reason to go back to it. Twitter made me watch this film. Mark made me watch this film.
I made you watch this film.
But
say it, Dave.
After this, I don't have to go back to this. I never have to see it again. I find the duck puns funny for a bit and then annoying. I find most of the human characters ungodfully annoying. The only thing I really like is like the special effects, like the old school special effects, the stop motion animation. Dude, I love Leah
Come on,
Thompson.
Dave.
I like Leah Thompson, and
Can't deny it.
And the seduction scene would have worked if she wasn't seducing
That's why I'm almost into it.
a puppet duck who was probably almost played by an 11-year-old kid.
It is disturbing.
Oh, that's even more
So-
when you think
That
about
is
it
very
like that.
disturbing. Yes.
So let's get disturbing there. Let's get disturbing again when we talk about Jeffrey Jones and why he's not in Hollywood anymore. It's because he was one of those people that was caught in a sting operation and he had child pornography on his computer. He went to jail for it. He paid many fines for it, and he hasn't really been hired in Hollywood since his
did not know
debacle
that.
with
You didn't know that, really?
Yeah.
No, I did not know that.
That's huge.
That's why I made the joke that he is a pedo. He's a pedophile.
okay.
So
That's why watching Ferris Bueller now is very disturbing.
it's very disturbing.
It's
Even
gonna
more
put
than
a whole
find
new
out
take
that-
on it. Yeah.
He's really after that kid. Yeah. It's funny because we have the credits of Howard the Duck going right now. We just saw 8 different people playing Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
Once again, just think about that. I mean, that would
Yep.
never happen now.
But the main credit is Ed Gale.
Yes, the main
a
credit,
little
yeah.
person actor.
He
but
did
like
the
I
most,
said,
apparently, yeah.
but like I said, no Warwick Davis, which is strange.
Yeah, that is
for,
strange.
for
I wonder what he must have been busy.
too busy with
When
Willow.
was
He wasn't that
Willow?
old, though,
Yeah,
was he? At that stage?
1987 was Willow, I think.
Yeah, he wasn't.
It was around the same time.
Wasn't very old at this stage, though. I mean, he was.
No,
like,
no.
He couldn't have been.
Oh,
what,
Willow
more
was
than-
made when he was 18, 19, I would say.
Yeah.
Because he was, well, he was 10 or 11 years old during
during the
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was young.
Jay, final thoughts on Howard the Duck.
Hope I never see it again.
Honestly, for as different of a take on this film as me and you have had during this podcast, you saying nothing, me saying a whole ton, I'm right there with you. I don't ever need to see this film again.
No, I think I'm there too.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched it. It's.
Am I the only one that actually enjoyed this movie?
No,
You're the
I
only
enjoyed
one that
it.
owns it, Mark.
I enjoyed it.
I proudly own this movie.
I don't own it, and I watched it online through Cody, so I didn't actually
there
purchase
are
it.
worse
But
movies.
it was interesting. I will watch it to say I've watched it and say it's Howard the Duck that we've seen, but I'm not going to go out and say,
It's almost like-
let's watch it again.
It's almost the same reason you watch The Room.
I watch it every day. No, I'm just kidding.
I did not hit her. I did not.
No, it's
This is bullshit. Oh, hi, Mark.
I will not say it's a good movie, but I will say it's worth watching.
Yeah, I'll say it's worth watching.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll go with that. It's worth watching just so you can say,
I do hope-
sat through all 97 minutes of Howard the Duck.
Do I think they got the character completely right? No, I do not.
No. You are also the only guy in this room that, even out of 3, the 3 of us that are comic book fans, you are the only one that owns a Howard the Duck comic book.
Right. Well, that's coming back years later. I mean, I didn't know about the comics when I was a kid, so it is interesting having those two different. Looking back on it years later and being like comparing it to the comic and whatnot.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
All right. I'm sick to death of Howard the Duck. I've said.
Oh,
Let's
come
move
on. I
on.
could go on.
I know we could. I know we could. What's really sad is we've talked about one decent movie and one fantastic movie in Jurassic Park, and
I've got
Starship
plenty more
Troopers.
bad ones, Dave. If
Starship
you're-
Troopers, I know you do. I know you're just waiting.
I got
to
'em up
pull
my
that-
sleeve, don't
I know
worry.
you're waiting to pull that Street Fighter out. I was
that's
expecting.
right.
I was expecting when you gave
I
your
know. I know.
when you gave your when you're about to tell us what our next category
Yeah.
is. I was expecting it to be 90s video game movies.
Oh, it will come. Don't worry. I'm gonna draw it out like a long torture.
Mortal
for Dave.
Kombat. Done.
Mortal Kombat is good. I will say that.
But yeah, I'm sure we could go on about Howard the Duck, but what's sad is we talked about Starship Troopers in this podcast. We talked about Jurassic Park, and this will probably be the longest one. The one we dislike is the one I dislike the most, the one that seems to be generally disliked by our panel here. It's the one
generally,
we talk
the
about the
majority.
most.
Yeah.
Majority.
Where of course, I'm sure, Mark didn't get to talk about Starship Troopers with us. He wasn't able
Yeah.
to join us, but I'm sure he...
I do enjoy that movie.
Yeah, see? The only one that didn't enjoy that movie was Jay. That's why you haven't heard Jay talk in these cocktail podcasts since Jurassic Park. But he's always here.
He's just staring at us.
Maybe we should vote
defiantly.
for his movies. Just like try and get one of the movies that he actually wants.
To get him
Actually
engaged.
thought Iron Man was going to win. But
It almost
probably
did.
wasn't until Howard.
I know.
It was
Howard
only
made the
10% away from Howard the Duck.
Duck.
Look, the people spoke, man. What can I say?
So what are we doing next?
So
I like
next,
my pick for this next category.
all right. So next, let me set this up. So
Yeah. So Mark is the one that's going to select our
Right.
next movie category.
So I thought I would change it up a little bit. We've been doing a lot of action, comic booky type things. So I thought, I like a lot of comedies. So I figure sketch comedy movies, which could be anything from, sketch comedy troupes like Kids in the Hall or Monty Python.
This is Spinal Tap,
Making a
Best in
movie,
Show,
or-
and A Mighty Wind. All of those, that is all
Well-
ad-lib comedy. They were all a sketch comedy.
Well,
crew.
I mean, like sketch comedy troupes that have made a movie, or
that's how all of them started.
movies that come from sketches like SNL movies,
Right.
Or movies that actually have sketches in them, like Kentucky Fried Movie. So it's a wide open category. I'm gonna go with Monty Python's Meaning of Life because that's my favorite Monty Python movie, and also I think is pure sketch in its purest form in movies.
Cool.
Okay, so who else would like to go
I
next?
go next
Okay.
in our round robin here. So for me, I had to look it up to make sure that this was a sketch comedy troupe and this is how they started out. I'm going with Broken Lizard's Super Troopers.
I knew it.
You boys like Mexico? Woo!
Very quotable movie. I'll give you that.
All right, Jay, what do you got?
Mother of God.
We are Coneheads.
Oh my God.
We
I
are
do
from
not
France.
like that movie.
Coneheads.
I do not like that movie.
I'm down with Coneheads.
Oh, yeah.
I like Coneheads. Everyone is in that movie.
It's
Everyone
it's
from
a weird,
SNL at
creepy
that
movie,
time.
but for some reason I really enjoyed it when I was a kid, and
Some chewing gum.
I
David
like to
Spade,
revisit
Chris
it.
Farley, like everyone is in that movie.
I am going Night at the Roxbury.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
I used to watch that all the time with a friend back home, and
baby,
Emilio. So that's what I'm going to go with.
No more.
All right, these are all good choices. I'm excited about these.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the poll will go up a couple weeks after this episode comes out. So your choices will be The Meaning of Life, Super Troopers, Coneheads,
Coneheads, yeah.
And Night at the Roxbury.
and Night at the Roxbury.
Not bad.
So I want to thank everybody for sticking this out with us. I'm already coming up with cocktail ideas for Super Troopers. But
Oh, you mean Monty Python?
you're the
You'd
one
be
that has to.
surprised.
You're the
If
one that has to
Howard
make the
the Duck
cocktail
come in,
next time. So
you never know who's going to win.
It's true. You never know.
if you know Twitter the way I know Twitter, I expected Howard the Duck to win. I actually expected it to be 50% of the votes and the rest of them to be barely sharing 10%. So I want to thank everybody for listening. I have been your host, Super Movie Brother Dave.
I'm your host, Super Movie Brother Jay.
I am Super Movie Cousin Rob.
Super movie. Other cousin Mark.
Rob also has his own show, the Fan Film Boyz. Plug your own show there. Rob.
Yeah, you can check us out. We're on a little bit of a brief break right now because my co-host, his wife just had another baby. So we're on a little bit of a break, coming back probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But you can catch us on iTunes, of course. We're the Fan Film Boyz. And our website is www.fanfilmboyz.com. And that's boys with a Z.
Mark, you actually have a website.
I do.
So why don't you plug your website,
Well,
man?
it's just my name, markdickerson.com, Mark with a C. I have a feature film in production, some comic books, a novel I just finished, so I'll be letting you know once one of those things gets out there.
But you do have some features on your website.
Yes, I do have some.
You have a 90-minute feature on there.
My
and-
YouTube you can check out, a movie called Not the End of the World. Stuff like that. So
Awesome. And of course, you can find Super Movie Brothers on any podcast catcher. You can follow us on Twitter at Super Movie Pod. Right now, we are running a contest for anybody who leaves us iTunes reviews. Leave us an iTunes review, screenshot it, and email it to supermoviebrotherspodcast@gmail.com. That will enter you in to win a Star Wars Funko Pop figure. They are numbers 180 and 181 in the Star Wars line, which is R5D5, which is the droid from A New Hope, which had a bad motivator. Uncle Owen, this R2 unit's got a bad motivator. And of course,
Dead on.
Naked C-3PO from Episode 1. So thanks a lot for listening. Have a great night. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
bye.